Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. It is Tuesday, November 6. I am Nurbek Savitakhunov. Relatives of the arrested brother of Golos Respubliki newspaper director Daniyar Moldashev, Askar Moldashev, appealed to the public for help. According to Daniyar, his brother's case carries an entirely non-criminal nature. Here's what the family had to say about the context of this proceeding.
This is the first press conference Moldashev's family give, where they appeal to public. Close relatives of Askar Moldashev and his lawyer have presented their version of recent events, following the arrest of Daniyar Moldashev, Askar's brother, the publisher of an opposition newspaper. I'm expecting something to happen to me in light of the recent events. I don't know if I will be arrested or detained, but I'm definitely expecting a provocation. The only way left for us is to appeal to the public. Even Askar's lawyer doesn't know for certain about Askar Moldashev's whereabouts or condition. There was no information from the investigator, and that is why we can't say whether Askar is in the internal affairs cell or if he was transferred to a different location. We're not made aware of his whereabouts. Askar Moldashev was detained by special forces on October 31st. The police allegedly found him in possession of illegal drugs. The search in Askar's apartment as well as apartments of his relatives didn't bring any results. On November 2nd, the court issued a 2-month arrest warrant for Moldashev. Prominent human rights activist Evgeny Zhovtis, who recently served a term himself, believes that drug possession convictions is the preferred tactics of the authorities. Two examples may be used to illustrate the situation. First, statistically, the number of solved drug-related crimes increases dramatically towards the end of the month, when the police has to report about their progress. Secondly, take the identifying witnesses. It seems like the police is bringing them everywhere they go and just use them whenever they arrest someone. Human rights activist says that an independent trial could have and should establish the truth in the case of Askar Moldashev. However, even judges doubt the possibility of such concept existing in modern Kazakhstan.
A scandalous march of native Russians demanding to establish a visa regime for Central Asians took place in Moscow this Sunday and was the topic of discussion in Kazakhstan. If the Ministry of Foreign Affairs classifies the march as a strictly internal democratic tradition of the country's strategic partner, other representatives of civil society see the firm hand of the government. Reactions to the Russian march from Kazakhstan in the following report.
Gabaz Zhumatov survived World War II, participated in combat defending Brest and Moscow. The senior citizen does not understand why people take part in the so-called Russian March in Moscow. After all, millions of people of different nationalities gave their lives fighting for those who no longer want to see non-Russians in Moscow. The statements of these people are simply mean. We defended Moscow together, people of all nations from across the USSR. This is our common motherland and nobody used to divide it. There were Uzbeks, Tatars, people from the Caucasus, and of course my fellow Kazakhs. This is the Sunday's rally, with people demanding to stop the flow of migration, introduce visa regimes with the countries of Central Asia, and asking to stop feeding the Caucasus. Serik Yergali does not separate the controversial march from the state policy. He says that it was not just an opinion expressed by ordinary men, but a manifestation of ideology. Obviously, there are people interested in this, those who brought 20,000 people in the streets. But the Turkic world should not be concerned because Russian nationalism ruins Russia foremost, and it is more harmful for ordinary citizens of the country. Kazakhstan's foreign ministry is aware of mass demonstrations in the neighboring state. However, it prefers to make only carefully worded statements. We build a relationship with Russia on a long-term basis and good neighborly friendly interaction. We focus on the strategic partnership between our two countries. Therefore, we believe the march represents only the opinion of separate individuals. Going through his military medals and photographs, Gabaz says that Moscow still remains the capital of his motherland, because that is the only city he still receives greeting cards from. Only the Muscovites still remember me, while Astana could not care less about veterans.
The Foreign Ministry has finally requested information regarding its compatriots who were enslaved in Moscow and Kurgan region. Ministry spokesman Altai Abibulayev announced the news at the weekly briefing.
Last week, KplusTV reported about 8 citizens of Kazakhstan who were held in slavery for 6 years in a Moscow store. Now a similar case is surfacing in the Kurgan region. 2 Kazakhstan citizens were forcefully held there as farmhands, not getting paid and frequently subjected to violence. In both cases, slavers are already in custody, and it appears that Moscow group consisted of former residents of South Kazakhstan region. The investigation is currently underway. Kazakhstan diplomats intervened in the case with a noticeable delay. Only now, after substantial hype in the press, they sent a formal request to Russian authorities asking to confirm the nationality of the victims. In case victims indeed hold Kazakhstan citizenship and the suspects are responsible for what they did, we intend to appeal to Russian law enforcement agencies asking to hold the defendants liable to the fullest extent of the Russian legislation.
A new scandal is surrounding another Olympic champion. The famous Kazakh cyclist Alexander Vinokurov is suspected of buying his victory on the prestigious Liège-Bastogne-Liège Tour. Italian investigators believe Vinokurov colluded with his opponent in 2010 to come in second, paying him a large sum of money. More on the price of victory in the following story.
As reported by Corriere della Sera, the public prosecution office has evidence proving that Alexander Vinokurov bribed the competing Russian bicycle racer Alexander Kolobnev with 150,000 euros to fix the race. This refers to the victory of the crown jewel of Kazakhstan sports in the league race 2 years ago. The Cycling Federation came back with quite a strong response. What do people expect us to do? These are nothing but groundless allegations. Currently, the Federation doesn't hold any official information. We are being continuously assailed because we are a thorn in the flesh for too many people. There's always somebody frowning upon the Federation. The newspaper reports that the investigators are ready to provide the court with the correspondence of the 2 sportsmen along with documents confirming that the funds to the amount of 150,000 euros were transferred by Vinokurov to Kolobnev's account. However, some sportscasters believe that the dirt on Vino is the work of the jealous competitors. Vinokurov has recently called time on his competitive career to become the Astana team manager. Some people don't like that because Vino is the man of consequence. In future, the strongest races will be kept to represent Astana, which means tough competition. Vinokurov's career is not only a series of spectacular wins like the one in London. It also features a few seamy pages of the Kazakhstan sports anthology. Tour de France 2007 resulted in 2-year disqualification for the racer. Bekjan Idrisov, a long-time sports fan and journalist, doubts that today Astana could be a somewhat serious competitor to Europe without Vino. Scandals make a part of the parcel of cycling today. Racing on the hardest tracks for 6 hours in a row is practically impossible without doping stimulation. The physical exertion is just that excessive. It could be that racers use doping to faster get into condition, and that's what the anti-doping committee is struggling to prevent. But for some reason their methods are kind of elective. One sportsman finally gets nailed after several years of questionable wins, others don't. That's pretty strange. In the meantime, Alexander Vinokurov, who found himself back in the spotlight with the money-backed wins scandal on hands, has turned off his phone and is enjoying a family getaway on Mauritius Island. However, Vino should be back at the Monaco training ground by November 15th to coach the team for the new season.
Karajan bus employees in Aktau met with Britain's labor unionist Mike Whale on Monday, November 5th. The guest promised to assist the workers within his capacities, at least in passing on the information to members of the European Parliament. To recap, sacked employees of Karajan Bus Munai have been picketing their company's office for over a year. They have 2 demands: re-employment as well as compensation for the idle days spent after what they claim to be illegal dismissal.
Representative of the British trade union explained former oil workers that a large envoy led by a member of European Parliament, Paul Murphy, was planning to visit Kazakhstan, but at the last moment, he and other group members were denied a visa. After their arrival to Kazakhstan, Whale immediately met with protesting Karajan Bus oil workers. He learned about their problems from his Kazakhstan colleagues. On Tuesday, Whale plans to visit Zhanaozen and will attempt to schedule a meeting with the governor of the region, Baurjan Muhamedjanov.
We've heard reports in England about the massacre of possibly 70 or 80 oil workers. And there have also been film clips put on YouTube which show the workers running away and being shot in the back by the police force. We've also had some reports that the whole thing was planned in order to teach the workers a lesson. Now, if that is the case, it is unacceptable for a government and the authorities to be treating workers like that. If Kazakhstan wants to be part of the community of nations, then it has to recognise the democratic rights of trade unionists and workers to protest in a legitimate fashion.
Alexander Pistolov, a representative of fired oilers, once again focused the attention of the foreign guest on the problems of the workers in the oil industry. According to him, all bodies involved, including employers, government, as well as officials and local committees led by the deputy governor, are evading their obligations, refusing to enter talks which could resolve the collective labor dispute as is required by the law. According to the 292nd article of the Labor Code, no party of the Conciliation Commission may refrain from taking part in conciliation procedures, the lawyers say. However, for over a year, the workers of Karazhan-Basmunay have been facing their problems on their own.
Самая главная беда, не хотят мирным примирительными процедурами рассмотреть.
The biggest and most important issue here is their evasion of conciliation procedure that could result from talks to consider and resolve the issue. They do not want to execute legitimate instructions and orders of the president, who said that demands of oil workers are justified. Thus, they must be considered and met. What else is needed? But they don't want to sit down and talk to us. None of them. No one can tell at what stage the resolution of the collective labor dispute is. There's no statute of limitations here.
Вот на какой стадии находится коллективный трудовой спор.
While some officials struggle to re-employ oil workers, other high-ranking public officers spend their time discussing the head of state's initiative. They are proposing to move towards a society of universal labor with the help of laborers themselves, who are avidly against an increase in targets and longer workdays. More in the following report.
It looks like the implementation of the President's Universal Labor Society program is being fast-tracked. The introduction of 9-hour workday is one of the proposals currently considered. The state healthcare agencies have to give their expert opinion on this matter, therefore let's not rush and jump into conclusions. Let's hear them out first and then we'll consider it. The head of statistics agency says that civil servants already have too much on their hands as far as heavy workload goes, and sometimes they even have to stay overtime. Many executives, especially in government institutions, work at least 9 hours daily anyway. If we take ordinary employees in public sector and other organizations, I think that the official 8-hour workday is quite enough. It was Nursultan Nazarbayev who advised the population to follow the example of South Korean counterparts back in September. He believes that with the 10-hour workday, the citizens of Kazakhstan could improve productivity and discipline, just like Koreans did. Tatyana Yugay is a software engineer who believes quality should go over quantity. What it has to do with the number of hours. The number of hours that a person spends at work will not affect his productivity. On the contrary, we need to increase the competition so that every employee can complete as much work as possible within the day, regardless of how many hours he worked, 5 or 10, as long as he gets done a lot of things. Murat Mashkenov, a trade union activist, reminds that one doesn't simply add additional hours to workday since it's a violation of the labor code. He says that the 40-hour work week was set in stone back in the Soviet times. This initiative, in essence, is bringing a whole new wave of fundamental changes which ought to destroy the very foundation of the labor code. First of all, people fought for the 40-hour work week for centuries, and suddenly we decided to return to the 19th century now. The elder generation is quite accustomed to the 8-hour workday with a 5-day week, which was used for the whole country for quite a while. It is not clear for them why young people need the additional hour at work when the country's demographic is not at the best shape. People won't handle 9 hours. Look at children. They can't handle more than 6 or 8 hours. It's not acceptable. I think it's wrong. It's too much. 8 hours are enough, I think. What for? Those who need money can work 12 hours a day, while those who don't can work 4. The government has the final word in the dispute, but it is not clear whether it will take into consideration the opinion of people it calls to work more for the benefit of society.
Court proceedings began on Monday in the case of the collapsed apartment complex in Bisoba this April. The general prosecutor identified 4 former officials who are accused of commissioning the exploitation of the complex. They signed inspection certificates and gave the green light to move in. The first to stand trial on Monday were Saran Mayor Viktor Ivanov and former Deputy Chief of Regional Department of State Architecture and Construction Control Daulat Altanbekov. Granted, the court did not get to the main issue. Find out what was covered at the first hearing up next.
The hearing on the most notorious case in Karaganda history was launched in the regional court on Monday. The fate of two officials is on the line: the former head of Saran local administration, Viktor Ivanov, and the ex-deputy head of the Regional Department of State Architecture and Construction Supervision, Daulet Altınbekov. Both are charged with abuse of office resulting in grave consequences. That's how more than 100 families lost their homes in a matter of seconds. 2 months later, Ivanov, who was heading the state commission that approved the collapsed building as operational, was placed under detention along with Daulet Altınbekov. On Monday, Ivanov's lawyer addressed the court with a petition to change the restraint to release on recognizance. He also claimed that his client was ready to post bail to the amount of $20,000. Ivanov himself is ill and his mother is 92 years old. Viktor is her only child. There are no more family members to look after her. Most victims are fine with the former head of Saran administration to travel to hearings from his home instead of jail. Besides, 6 members of the regional council vouched for Ivanov. Each will pay over $1,000 if the official will flee during the investigation. Only one of the Besoba tenants is not happy about the taken decision. Some council members now vouch for them, but where were they when the building was being raised? Ivanov says that the building was roughly fitted with wallpapers and flooring. That's a lie. There was nothing there. Where were the council members while we were wading through the dirt year after year? I'm totally against this decision. After hearing both parties, the judge retired into the chambers, and 2 hours later she affirmed the restraint for Ivanov unchanged. Meanwhile, another criminal trial is starting on Tuesday. The defendants are the former deputy head of Karaganda local administration, Sergei Grebenshikov, and the head of the Karaganda local administration department.
One of Astana's shareholders had a nervous breakdown after yet another polite denial in her 5th visit to Mayor Imangalitas Magambetov.
My son told me he will commit suicide. I've heard enough of these promises. I'm listening to them for 48 years already. He's disabled since childhood, and I've had enough. Don't push me into doing something to myself. On Monday, about 50 mortgage holders took their appeals to the city administration reception, asking to recall the government decree on the redistribution of only 1 apartment per person. Notably, the outraged people paid for several living quarters each and now want to restore their rights. This is not the first time interest holders voiced their demands through pickets and protest actions, but always in vain. On Monday, the group was ignored altogether except for several policemen watching for order. Everyone knows that moneybags on the left bank of the river purchased apartments by the dozen and they're still unoccupied there. Our state is filthy rich and it could have easily bought out these flats if it wanted or jailed sad people.
In other news from the capital, car owners from Uralsk appealed to the higher court as a last resort. Those who imported foreign vehicles at discounted rates 2 years ago are now being fined inordinate amounts of money by customs officials, sometimes exponentially exceeding the price of vehicles themselves. Around 40 residents of Western Kazakhstan found themselves in a similar situation.
We still do not understand how could the customs officers themselves inspect everything and give us a green light just 1.5 years ago. The traffic police have also made verifications and all the documents were clean. What were we supposed to do? We have taken this to the court, but to no avail. Cars imported to Ural were found to be over 10 years old, therefore missing on the concessional taxation. By law, the Customs Committee is entitled to review the amount of custom fees during 5 years upon the import of the vehicles. However, lawyers question the credibility of the established car age.
Эти частные компании установили, что срок выпуска этих автомашин превышает 10 лет.
These private companies said that the age of these vehicles exceeds 10 years. Yet when we asked them in court how they determined that and whether they are in fact certified official dealers and distributors authorized to provide such information, they could not provide us with any proof.
Данные доказательства практически не представляются.
Should the Supreme Court side against the car owners, the latter threaten to organize protest rallies. After all, they might lose their cars soon, and that is the sole source of income for many of them.
Officials in Almaty are debating what came first, trash bins or waste processing plants. In the meantime, more than 23 billion of tons of solid household waste has accumulated inside municipal landfills. The city administration is attempting to educate Almaty residents to observe cleanliness and sort their trash. However, new bins installed across the metropolis cause bemusement along with admiration among the population. More in the next story.
The residents of Almaty are happy with new sorting containers for solid municipal waste, such as paper, glass and other types of garbage. It looks like the city authorities have declared a war on waste. They, however, forgot to tell citizens that they have to sort their garbage now.
Баки установлены, но в дальнейшем что делать с этим мусором?
They've installed trash containers, though the first step to fight waste was made. However, nobody knows what to do now. It is the authorities who should solve the issue. It is clearly stated in the city documents on the municipal improvements that the entire system must be controlled by the city authorities.
Система, она должна контролироваться городскими властями.
In 2004, environment activist Melsi Liusizov concluded his campaign for the presidency with an appeal to sort garbage. However, his idea on creating a reception and processing waste center was implemented only in one location in Almaty. Aripkhan Nagaev is not put off by a bulk of rammed waste, paper and plastic cans nearby. It used to stink here, there was garbage everywhere. Now there is no smell. Everything runs smoothly due to the waste processing station. Melsi Liusizov says that several mayors of Almaty have tried to set up garbage recycling plants. Viktor Kharpunov even organized a waste compressing enterprise. The landfill was soon full and a plant was built nearby. But now it is idle, with workers saying that financing has stopped, which even forced them to launch a strike due to unpaid wages. Mayor Tasmagambetov decided to set up a plant there. As I remember, 24 million euros were allocated for this construction. It was opened with great hype, but it was not worth it. There was this terrible smell. It worked for a short time as the government refused to finance a private company. About $3 million has been allocated from the budget for its maintenance. Later, another mayor, Yesimov, cut off the funding completely and the plant died at once. Nevertheless, officials are not at all bothered by the lack of waste treatment. The new sorting waste containers fit well in their dull reality. According to some data, about $1.7 million from the state budget has been already allocated for over 400 containers.
Finally, Kazakhstan is first among CIS and Eastern European countries in suicide rates among young women. On Monday, psychologists spoke about the causes of such tragic form of leadership, but offered no specific tools to confront the issue. Meanwhile, another teenager took her own life over the weekend.
A 16-year-old schoolgirl committed suicide in Pavlodar, jumping from the 5th-floor balcony. A reason is unknown, as the police found no suicide note. According to neighbors, there is nothing much they could tell about the girl. It happened at about 5 p.m. and her body laid there on the ground till about 6 or so. We have not seen this happen personally. I've only noticed people shouting about something, and when I looked outside, her body was already on the pavement. The hotline psychologist usually has no more than 10 minutes to save a child's life. There are up to 40 incoming calls on a daily basis. Most of the time, a teenager who is contemplating suicide simply needs to be heard. During the hotline conversation, we tried to establish mutual trust between the caller and the counselor, so that later on we could follow up with them over the phone. To dial a hotline is easier than talking to parents, according to psychologists and experts. Family members tend to be busy and irresponsive to children's problems. We need to pay attention to the fact that lately parents don't even know how to upbring their children. In theory, school psychologists should also help children in despair. Recently, the Ministry of Education started to upgrade their qualifications. However, according to the crisis center, it's not going to solve the problem completely. Children don't tend to trust teachers as they're held accountable, and everything is too dependent on various ratings. We would get the real picture when we stop evaluating school activity based on the cases brought against minors. It would happen when a child would be able to easily visit a psychologist and speak about problems confidentially, knowing that the psychologists won't report it to the school principal. In the meantime, providing extracurricular activities is a more effective measure, says Zulfiya Baysakova. Nowadays, children are addicted to the internet, where with a click of a mouse, they can download suicide manuals or open the forums promoting violence. The investigation is yet to find out what caused the schoolgirl from Pavlodar to commit suicide. This isn't the first instance of teenage self-inflicted death in this apartment block. A few years ago, young men jumped out of the 12th-floor balcony as well.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. We hope to see you tomorrow.